Welcome to the Success Resequencing Project. I'm Debbie Ponticus.
And I'm Jen Newman.
Join us as we challenge the traditional definitions of success so you can build a fulfilling path of your own.
Get ready for inspired, candid conversations while gaining tools, inspiration, and confidence to create your own authentic success story. Intuition is a compass that guides our decisions, even if we don't always understand where it's taking us. And honing the skill to listen to your inner voice or spirit is something that our next guest has mastered. It is how she sets herself apart as a branding strategist and linguist. Emily Soccorsy has a gift, and that gift is to help business owners tap into their core beliefs and passions through reflection and vision. As the owner and lead brand strategist of Root & River, she believes that brand is how others experience your soul, and we are excited to share her personal story of spirit and intuition. Emily, we are so happy that you're here with us.
So excited.
This is
totally
just like
thrilled.
such a moment, a full circle
It
moment
is a full
for
circle
us.
moment. Absolutely.
For those who are listening, we are so blessed that Emily Soccorsy is here because she actually was really the woman and the mastermind behind Debbie and I coming together. We referred to that in our first episode about how we came with this idea of wanting to build something, but we didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
And so we're sitting here because of you.
Yeah.
So what a gift. What a gift. Thank you.
I'm crying.
Yeah.
And scene.
We are
Thanks.
accomplished.
Okay, we're
All right,
done.
that was
So
our
great to have
review.
you. Yes, exactly.
30 seconds in, we've got our first guest crying.
I love it. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
We're so excited to actually hear more about your story today. We know how influential your company was, your methodology, your ethic, what that meant to us in this process. And we feel really blessed that we get to now carry that forward into our brand. So we're excited to be able to have this moment with you today. So we're going to go through the bio in bullet form first.
Cool.
Okay.
Sounds good.
So here we go. Bachelor's degree in human communication, master's degree in nonfiction writing from ASU.
Go Devils.
Go Devils indeed. Background in human behavioral research and neurological studies.
Yes.
Former journalist,
Yes.
publisher, VP of Communications,
Yes.
and now owner and lead brand strategist of Root & River. And we must say an intrinsic brand strategy firm, keyword.
That is key.
Also co-author of the book Rooting Up, Essays on Modern Branding. So welcome.
Thank you.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
exciting.
I mean, my God.
Where do we even start?
Where do we start?
I know.
Right?
So, I think when Emily sat down with us at lunch over a year ago, and we said we want to brand.
That gets me a little choked up.
And she said, what do you want to brand? And we said, we don't know. And she was like, great. She's just strapped on her boots and said, let's get to town and let's figure out what you ladies want to do. And and this is not necessarily a podcast about that. We could have a whole separate podcast about that whole journey, and maybe we should.
Yes.
But what we wanted to kind of give back to our listeners is who Emily is and how she has gone on her own personal journey. When she helped us kind of understand the pillars of the Success Resequencing Project, when you helped us do that, some of the pillars and our core beliefs, you absolutely resonate, all of them. I think the ones that really stick out in our mind are initiative, voice, and spirit.
For sure.
Being and listening to your intuition.
Yes.
So I think what we want to do today is really dig into that side of you and give our listeners, because I think what it does is it helps people realize why you're so good at what you do. So, when you started in journalism, I think that's when, when you were on that journey, you really tapped into your intuition a little bit. And I think one of those, if you can give us a little bit of insight into when that journey kind of helped you pivot, when you turned into your intuition and realized maybe you needed to do a pivot out of journalism, and why?
I'm just so overcome. So give me a moment. I'm excited to answer that question for you.
Yes.
I'm just so proud of both of you and just honored to have been on the journey with you. So going back to my journalism journey, I loved it. I kind of, it was not what I studied. I studied communication, which was purposefully broad. And I didn't really know what I wanted to be when I grew up. I just knew that communication would be a key part of it in some facet. So I came to journalism sort of listening to my intuition. Like I spent a year in Japan teaching English, and then kind of came back after college and came back to start my career. And I was like, well, what am I good at? It was a really rough time. I was pretty depressed when I left Japan. It was a difficult time in my life. And I sort of felt like I was starting all over. And at that time, to kind of take it back a little bit, I was like, well, I'm really good at writing. I knew that. That was the one thing I knew. And I was not a journalism major. I had never written a story, I guess, since 8th grade. In grade school, I had done a little bit of that, but not at all during high school or college. And so I got out the newspaper and found, remember the one ads?
Yeah, that was a real thing.
And I responded to an ad for a reporter I had no business responding to, right? But I got an interview and they said, bring your clips. And I said, okay, no problem.
Like hair clips?
Hair clips.
So I was like, well, I need clips. I will create clips, not falsely, but I will write a newsletter about my family. And so I did that because I had nothing else really to write about. And I brought that with me. And I said, this is what I can do. And I don't know. I got hired somehow. But it was a feeling like at that point of intuition that it was, this is maybe where I was meant to be. And that really fell into place during those 8.5 years when I was a journalist. And so I think for me, pivoting out of there, knowing it was time for a pivot, I had something really difficult happen, which happened all the time at that time in the, early 2000s. And that part of our economy was really changing. Journalism, communications, it was all changing because of the rise of the internet, and news organizations really trying to figure out how to be in the space, how to share information, paywalls, free, what kind of service were we providing? Was the printed product, did it matter anymore? So there was just a lot of upheaval, which I found to be interesting, but I also just felt like I'd started as a cub reporter, again, not knowing what the hell I was doing, covering education. And I had been able to kind of, worked my way through and was now the publisher. And I just felt like I'd done kind of everything inside of that sphere. And I kind of got disappointed and my tank got low, but not in a negative way, like where I was in crisis. I was just like, I think I've done everything I can do here and I need to keep growing.
Yeah.
So just an instinct that I needed to build another skill set. That arose.
So what was that skill set? What was that next step for you? So after 8 years of doing journalism, what is that? Talk to us about, sit in that for a second, and the process of deciding what was that next turn, where was that Y in the road taking you, and what was going on, what you were probably tuning into your inner voice, your intuition, trying to dig in to say, what's next for me? So tell us a little bit about that part of your journey.
Yeah, I think at these moments in my life, and I can look back and see a lot of them, I don't really have a clear sense of where I'm going next. I just have this clear sense that something has to change. And it's a bit of a surrender. It's a bit terrifying. It's a bit thrilling. I think one of the things, and this has actually proved to be very helpful in journalism, is just being able to be in a spot where you're taking in a lot of information and not making a decision, but like gathering it and being in the messy middle and the unknown for as long as it takes to get that clear, this is what I'm supposed to do.
Yes.
And having faith in that moment that it will come. And that's a relationship that bounces back and forth. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't, but you're committed to being in the messy middle. And I think I can do that because I have a good relationship with my emotions and myself. And I have the support of an amazing partner, my husband, and an incredible family. So that gives one an ability to sit in the weird in between.
That's right.
So I kind of sat in the weird in between with that knowledge. And then somebody reached out to me about a job or I can't remember if she reached out or I called her, whatever. She ran a small PR firm. And I always liked her and respected her work. And so I did what many journalists do, and they go to the other side, which from the newsroom into a small boutique PR firm. And it wasn't that I was like, yeah, I'm going to do PR forever. It was just like, well, that's an interesting take, skills line up, but also it opened up a whole other box. So I was like, okay, that feels right enough for the next move. And so I leapt.
Yeah. You know, you've always talked about, and I've heard you talk about this in other forums, you're a lover of narrative. Mm-hmm. Do you feel that narrative has actually been something that came from within first? Mm-hmm. Or do you feel that you absorbed narrative and then found a way to use that with your own inner voice?
What an interesting query. I think it came from within. Mm-hmm. I say that I experience life emotions first, and I think another part of that is that I experience life kind of through the lens of narrative. Mm-hmm. Like I never see just the thing. I always see the story that got us here. Like right now, and why I got so emotional in the opening is that I see the path of how we got here, even beyond that moment. And when we first talked about what this could be, so like when I first met Debbie and our first coffee, and going back from that, I see that we were in a women's group together that I joined years ago. Yeah. And at that moment, the decision to join that and where I was, and I remember how I felt, and I felt uncertain, and I felt like I was going to have to do something different again. Like, so I kind of view life that way. Mm-hmm. And I was always a lover of stories as a child. I don't know if I've told you this, but my earliest memory is that I was 3 years old. I was riding in the back of our giant powder blue station wagon.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You know, no car seat.
No.
Maybe there was a booster. Like, give my mom a little credit.
Doubtful.
Maybe.
Mm-hmm. May have been in the car.
My baby brother was next to me.
Totally.
Mm-hmm. We were driving home from a play date. My mom had the big sunglasses on.
Yes.
So she rocked.
Yep.
And I am suddenly overcome with sadness. And I start crying. And I am crying. I'm crying. And I remember physically being in my body in that moment and just crying. And not really knowing as a small child what I was crying about. And my mother saying, Emily, why are you crying? Probably like, oh my gosh, these children, because she had 4 of them. And as she asked me that question, I realized the reason. And the friends that we had been visiting, they were a little older than us. And the other child, I don't even remember, boy or girl, they could read. And they were reading books to me. And I just said, I blurted out to my mom, I have to learn how to read. Wow. There are so many books and there's not enough time, and I have to learn how to read. And I felt like in that moment, I felt like I'm never going to learn how to read. And it was like this door that had to be open.
Yes.
And so that is I think my drive for storytelling was innate in me.
Yes.
And not just to tell stories, but to be absorbed in stories and to fall away from myself in stories and to experience new worlds. And then later I came to the belief that I could craft them as well.
Yeah.
Oh,
Which, I mean,
powerful.
Fast forward now with Root and River and what you do there, you do have this intrinsic ability to listen to someone's story and help them craft a message around that I think they don't even know. I think that's what, every time I've sat down with you and gone through a branding session, or you pull out these emotions and positive, negative, all of the above to really understand from what the person is trying to communicate. And it's such an exhilarating experience. It's almost like therapy. You know, it truly is, because I think most people, when they think of storytelling or using words or narrative, it's very top level, very surface, very what does corporate need me to say? What are the tag words I need to fit in? And what you do, and it's such an interesting realization of how you've been drawn to this since even a little girl. You have this gift of pulling back the curtain a little bit Like, no. That's all fine and dandy. And if you want to be like everyone else, then you can use those words. And I'm no good for you here. But if you're really ready to dig in and you're really ready to channel that little girl who's crying in the back seat and they don't know why, but yet now you have to read those books. You have to do this. You have to find your passion. You have to figure out why you're different. It's truly, I mean, we were exhausted after that day of our branding session only because of all the emotions we didn't expect to have.
Well, because it's so natural. Because what I love about it is that it's an invitation to go deeper.
Yeah.
And when you really take the time to do that, what comes from that is something so organic and in alignment with who you are. And so it's almost like a birthing process that we went through that day, because we started and we ended with this. We knew we had this. It felt very tangible.
Yeah.
It went from intangible to tangible. And that was because of the words. That was because of the story. That was because of the journey.
Right.
That is an incredible experience to go through. And then to know that we built the words around this idea that now has its own legs. And we get to refer back to those words every single day. But it feels like we knew that it came from within. That was you're just like this guide. It's almost like you're a Sherpa along the way. It's just this really beautiful experience. So to know that you felt that from such a young age it just shows how intrinsic it was to you, which of course you would then have an agency that is based on that very piece, which it comes from within.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. Like, talk about the journey. I know you have shared with us that your goal was to never be an entrepreneur.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. True story. Like, you're like, I have no interest in owning a business. No. But now you own a very successful business, which has had its ups and downs, as every business has had.
Yeah.
So talk to us about that moment when you realized, okay, to go where I need to go with what I need to do, I have to cross that bridge. I have to now become a business owner. So talk to us about that process.
Yeah, I think it's so funny in this conversation how you dance with the things that you are born for. Because, wouldn't it be nice if it was a straight line for me crying in the car to like, I know exactly. But of course, and in your other conversations, I've heard that theme too. So no, I mean, I was working as a VP of corporate communication for a human behavioral research company. And I was enjoying that quite a bit, following a more traditional path that my dad, and my mom, they had jobs that were, the way that the boomers did.
Yeah,
they just dug in and they had careers that lasted, 40 years at a certain place. Yep. And so I felt that, it was good. It was good.
Like, it's easy.
Good. Yeah. And challenging, but in good ways. And then, I met Justin Foster, who was my initial business partner in this endeavor that is Root and River. And he was speaking and doing some brand consulting. And I saw him speak and I was like, oh, okay, branding, that's interesting. I was really more focused on strategic communication. And it was like there was a separation between narrative and my love of language and writing and storytelling. And then what I was doing then was it had pieces of that, but I saw it as more strategic communications marketing, right? And so there was kind of this wall between the selves a little bit at that time. And I think when I met Justin, it was like, oh, I understand that that the wall isn't really there. And his approach was so different. And so I was just kind of like sparked by that. I was like, oh, this is interesting. And so we started having conversations about the brand of the company I was working for, brought him in, and he did a session and with all of the executives, and it was great. And throughout the session, I thought, this is really good and I can make it better. And it was just, again, I was just like sparked, like, yeah, it felt like a bringing together kind of different aspects of my thinking. And so we ended up working together on that project. And there was just a moment where I was like, oh, this could be its own thing. And this is where the intuition starts pulling up inside of me. And I'm like, I'm pretty safe. I'm pretty happy. I'm pretty like settled. I love my team. There are some challenges inside of the organization, but in a different universe, that wouldn't have mattered. And just, I think this is a great quote by Anaïs Nin that I've been thinking about lately. It's something to the effect of, there are times when like the universe kind of grabs you by the hair, like the stars are pulling you up by the hair, and it sort of felt like that. I'll get the exact quote because that will really bother me.
We'll put it in the show notes.
Okay, please.
Yes.
And so I think it's one of those moments, and so that was one piece of it. The other piece of it was, again, I mentioned some challenges within that organization. And I just had a sense after having spent by that point, over a decade inside of, corporate world, that I really wanted a different culture to work within. And so one day I was sitting behind my desk and I was like, I guess I got to go back out there and find the culture that I want to work in. Or I'll just build it myself.
Yes.
And that just felt like more like right on.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't have time for that. Right. Like, I don't have time to go round robin different companies.
Yep.
I'll just build it myself. That'll just be easier.
so much easier. Yes.
No problem. But it also, again, intuitively felt very right. Like, and so I think that was really the last piece to fall in place. And I was like, I'll build it myself. And then Justin, and I were like, okay, let's do this thing.
And didn't you do it simultaneously for a bit? You didn't immediately quit.
Correct.
So that journey in and of itself, what did that feel like? Talk about being in between two worlds. What was that experience in those moments while you were, before you made the official, okay, we're ready and now we jump? What did that feel like?
Well, I guess when the universe is pulling you up by the hair, you're on fire.
Yeah.
And you can do all of the things. I mean, there's those moments in your career where you're just like, no, I got it. I can do it all. And I can, and the energy is high.
Yep.
And you're like, I'll figure it all out. So I think my RPMs were just like, high, very high during that time.
Yeah.
And I was very open and honest with everyone. There was no hiding. I was like, this is what I'm going to do. Went to the CEO and I'm like, I'm doing this. And he's like, okay. And so I just made it work. And I had an amazing team inside of the company that was supportive, and technology. I could be anywhere. I could be kind of experimenting on Root and River, working with a client, and then also, switch it over and be working on the plane ride home.
Sure.
In my other capacity. So I think when you're fired up and passionate, you can be in between until you can't.
That's right.
And then you have to be realistic. Like, this
No,
can't
it's
go
time.
on forever.
Yeah,
You have to
correct.
know when the messy middle should end.
Yes. And sometimes it's
Great quote, actually.
That is a great quote.
Yeah.
And I think that, similar to what you said earlier, there's never really a black and white. There's never really an off switch and an on switch. It's one of the dimmers, right?
Yeah.
So you have to kind of like figure out when can you jump. When like you've got to jump. You have to get close enough to where when you jump, you can grab onto the rope or whatever it is, and that rope will swing you to the next one. But you can't. It's like, how do you know when that is? And then I think if you're, did you experience, because I've experienced this before, when you're making these types of big changes, where you're ready to go, but you don't know if there's not a net. Nothing's going to catch you.
No.
When you finally just have to pull the trigger.
Yeah, and actually, to go back a little bit in time, I had one of those moments when I left the PR firm. I didn't have a next thing. I didn't even have a hint of a next thing figured out, but I knew I had to leave. And my mom had cancer. And it was a different kind of like moment.
Sure.
And that I didn't have anything else because I was at capacity trying to help take care of my mom. I had 2 children under the age of 5 and work full time. And it was a really difficult time. So I had no other feelers out there in the world, nothing. But I just suddenly thought one day I was picking up my daughter from daycare and I thought, I wonder if I just hung my own shingle. Like, what if I did this thing where if people called me, I would just say yes to whatever they needed. And I started germinating on that, talked to my husband about it, talked to my dad about it. And then I remember driving to meet some friends. It was around holiday time, and it was one of the holiday cookie parties that you go to on occasion.
Yes, love it.
And I had kind of started making up my mind that I was just going to do that. I was just going to jump out of the plane. And I put on Defying Gravity.
Oh, yes.
And Defying Gravity, get chills. Defying Gravity is on as I'm driving down Hayden Road, and I'm screaming singing at the top of my lungs.
Totally.
And I'm like, yeah,
Do it.
you won't bring me down. I'm just
You
going to
won't bring
jump.
me down,
I'm just
that's
going
right.
I'm going to try to kick off the ground on my broom and see if I can fly. And if I can, I can't. But yeah, so that was like a leap moment, more so than I think any other time. I mean, starting the business, it sounds like it, and it was, but because of the off-ramp I had created, I had confidence that the model would work, even though I was overconfident about that and how hard it was going to be. But I knew it would probably work. I knew we had something very special. So that felt the moment in the car, deciding to leave the PR firm felt more like that kind of a
But I think
leap.
that was the setup for you to be able to create an off-ramp at a different time, because the stakes were really high at that moment. You've got your mother who's going through cancer. You have little kids. You've got everything that's what life's all about. So the stakes are really high in that moment because you know you need to honor that time, that season in your life. So you did it once and you saw how that played out for you. So then to create that off-ramp later, it was more like, I've got this. High confidence or not, you just knew there's something about knowing if I could do it then I can do this, especially if I'm living in between these two worlds. It's really, that's amazing.
And I think living abroad, I'd lived in Japan after college. I had no business moving there. In other words, I didn't know anything about Japanese culture. I was extremely naive and just like, it was an opportunity to live abroad, which I had done in college as well in Scotland. And so I guess in this conversation, I'm looking back and saying, interesting. I do make these big leaps when the intuition tells me to. And I think, yes, as you get older, you do have that base of experience to draw from and know. And not all of those are successes. I mean, not all of those were easy times, are great, wonderful experiences. But I think you build the confidence that if the shit hits the fan,
Correct.
I can undo this or figure out a way through it.
Turn the fan off.
Yeah.
I'm going to turn it off.
If the shit
Hits the fan, just turn it off.
Step one, turn off the fan.
Get out of the way.
Ladies and gentlemen,
but
Debbie
yes,
Pantikas.
thank you so
That
much.
is
I've been waiting for
fabulous.
that.
Thank you for
That
that.
could be the episode.
But you know, I think what's interesting, and tell me your thoughts on this. I think when life is this journey of pivots, challenges, changes, and when you're younger, that diving board is longer. Okay, so when you get older, I think the diving boards for these changes get shorter and shorter. And what I mean by that is you learn that you don't have to wait so long to jump. And so you don't have to drag it out. I think as you get older and the experiences that you have and these changes and understanding what you need to surround yourself with and understanding what you have to think about mentally to be able to take these changes, you start recognizing that drive, that you're recognizing your energy coming up, you're recognizing being pulled by the hair quicker and sooner and what that means to you. Yeah. And so you don't wait as long to jump. I think as you go through life, you get more of a confidence to listen to your intuition. So when you don't sit in it as long.
Well, and I think part of it comes from, we're also at that time in our lives where when you start to go through in your 40s and into your 50s, there's also another sense of, we just don't have time to wait.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And that, I don't think you just can't be prepared for that feeling until you experience it.
Yeah.
Something shifts, whether it's issues with parents, you start to see that mortality on a different level, whether it's something you've gone through personally, whether you've seen people wait and then something happens to them and all they wanted was to do something that they never did. It puts it in perspective in a different way of, I don't have that much time. I need to actually go do the thing so I can enjoy it now, so I can experience it now. You just want to pack so much in so you are ready to jump sooner. You're like, why am I waiting?
Right.
Yeah, I think I really resonate with that, because the other thing that happened in that in between was my mom died of pancreatic cancer at 62. And making the decision to leap into DeRooten River was informed by that. I mean, when your parent dies, you're just like, oh, I remember thinking for weeks afterwards, like, that's it. There is a final, that's it. That's all we get. And unexpected, never sick a day in her life until she got cancer. And so, yeah, there's sort of a, why wouldn't I do it?
Right.
Again, I'll figure it out if it all goes to shit, but why not? Life is very short. And your work, I've written about this before, that your work here will be unfinished. You'll never get to a perfect point. You'll leave maybe in a messy middle. Very few of us get this beautiful exit when everything's done. Like, that's not a thing. And I think sometimes we're waiting for the perfect moment but we have to remember that our work here will be unfinished, incomplete. And that's okay. So it's all part of the process. And I think that's the thing. Like, sometimes I feel like my diving board is really long because I have to emotionally get to the place. My husband will be like, do we really have to suffer all the way through this?
He's like kicking you down.
Yeah,
I'm about to throw you off my own life.
Yeah, you can go, but I'm like, no, I need my process. Yeah, so sometimes I think I make it longer, but I think ultimately now I am very influenced by the fact that, and I've had the experience of loss quite a bit. So yeah, it's finite.
It is.
Let's get moving.
Right. Exactly.
So what would you tell yourself if you were to go back to the day where you're about to jump, right? And you're about to start this journey of Root and River. If you could go back to that day, now knowing what you know, is there something you would tell yourself?
I don't know that there is. Because I want that woman to experience everything that she did in the way that she did. And because I honor like the process, like it's all a part of what got me here. Like I don't have a lot in my life where I'm like, I wish I'd done it sooner. I just feel like it's all unfolding, in a way. And sometimes I'm frustrated by that. Sometimes I'm like, oh my God, can we hurry up through this part? I don't like it.
Yep.
But there's a deeper knowing that it's all part of the journey that's important. And the learning and the uncovering and the falling flat on your face is important. So I wouldn't, I don't know if I would tell that woman anything. Yeah, I mean, there are mistakes. There are so many mistakes I've made and so many times where I'm like, oh, I should have handled that differently. But I want that person to experience all that because it's going to make her better.
Yeah.
In each instance.
But I think that just put, for me in this moment, that just put the quest in a totally different perspective. We talk about every step matters because that's about going somewhere, right? That's about getting somewhere. What I love is that every step matters because you have to experience it to go to the next step. There's something it puts you in the present moment, in the here and the now, not so much always forward thinking, but it's about in this moment or this season or this experience, where I am right now is exactly where I'm supposed to be. And I don't think we honor that enough, especially those of us who are type A, driven, future casting, always at 35,000 feet going, okay, where are we going next? Where are we going next?
Right.
I love the notion that there isn't anything to go back and say because it all mattered.
Yeah.
You don't want to rob that past self of all the beautiful, delicious experiences that happened along the way.
No.
Thank you for that. That just, it resonates in a different way in this very moment.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
thank you for that.
And you've been on our journey of the Success Resequencing project and what we're trying to do and why we're trying to debunk the word success, debunk the word, the idea that everyone has to follow a certain path. So knowing that, you've probably are one of the most prepared guests to answer this question that we're ever going to have. How would you define success?
I think to pull the thread that we have started to unravel here, it's about presence. I think it's about, and this is something that I've come to in the last 5-6 years since my mom died. It's about being fully present in your life. I mean, gosh, there's just no better feeling or way to live than being able to like take this moment in and really be here and be in my body and be with you.
Yeah. And
because as we were talking about earlier, we can return to these moments and then we carry them with us. And so I guess what I would kind of generally tell myself is like, oh, be so present. be so present for it all, because it's like these little moments are the big moments. Another lesson after my mom's passing is like, the little moments are the big moments, and the little things are the big things.
Yeah.
And we don't realize that as we're going through it. We just don't. So I think success is loving the journey, holding yourself when it's rough, figuring out how to do that, how to care for yourself and be compassionate for yourself.
Yeah.
Like self-compassion is also something I've come to in the last few years. Like, so difficult for driven people to be compassionate for everyone. So that I think success is knowing what you have and being in the moments that really matter.
Yeah. I love that. Man.
I feel like we need a moment of silence after that. It's just so powerful.
It really is.
Thank you for that. What a gift that is.
Oof. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you love to read.
Yes, I love it.
You said that at the very beginning. Give us your favorite book right now. What's calling you right now?
Oh my goodness, such a difficult question.
Okay, not a favorite, because you can't have a favorite. It's like picking your favorite baby.
Yeah.
But what are you reading today?
I'm constantly reading something. So I'm reading a book about The Body Keeps the Score.
Thank you.
It's really interesting. I'm also a voracious podcast listener. So I kind of get books from all over, but I just finished just something light. I just finished the latest Craig Johnson novel. So I read that. I'm trying to think about like one of the most impactful books that I've read recently is called Broken Open. And it's about remaking the self. Untethered Soul is an amazing book.
Yes.
That
Such
had
a
a
good
big
book.
impact on me.
Yeah.
It's something I love the work of Mark Nepo. He's amazing. And he's written a variety of books that I keep close at hand.
Yeah.
I go back and reread the classics sometimes. So I reread The Great Gatsby on occasion. It's an excellent, I think it's a kind of a perfect novel in terms of its structure and the way the narrative is constructed. And I always find new gems. It's like I go to the botanical garden a lot, and every time I walk the garden, I see something new. I'm like, I never noticed this before.
Right.
And that's how it is sometimes with books, that you can open them up again and go, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that.
It's so true.
How come I didn't see that?
Right. Isn't it amazing? Yeah. Whatever filter
amazing.
we're in, whatever lens we're using in the given moment, we do see new things. It's incredible.
And I just love to consume books. I just read a book called Husbands and Lovers. And there was just one passage where the writing was, I was like on the ground. Like it was just this one chapter. It's just so beautiful. So I go on and on about books.
The books.
Yeah.
If
Those
you need a
are-
book list, reach out to
Seriously.
Emily.
I can
But
give you a book list
I
for the
know.
show
I love
notes if you'd like.
Yes,
Actually,
we
that
do
is
need-
amazing. We would love that.
Yeah, sure.
Let's
That would
have
be-
Emily's curated book list. I really love that.
That would be great.
That's
It would be
amazing.
great. Yeah.
How can our listeners find you, connect with you? What does that look like?
I'm most active on LinkedIn. That's really the only social media place that I am these days. They can also go to rootandriver.com, ROOT and river.com and learn about our work there. But yeah, if you want to reach out to me directly, just connect with me on LinkedIn and send me a DM. And we'd love to chat with people about where they are in their journeys. And, it's so fun to be a companion for part of that ride.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I feel called to ask you this question. What is a final thought that you want to share with our listeners? I feel like there's something else that needs to be said.
So I just really want to honor the whole idea that you have brought to life here, that the journey that we're on, there's a sacredness to the journey. And that, again, is really the successful part of life, is being aware. And I think what's intriguing about my work, but it's an idea for everyone, is that it takes real courage to stop and look at where you are on the journey. And that's always interesting with people. They're like, I need to do a brand. But then they're like, oh, this is deep. This is going to the core.
Yeah.
And there's fear that comes up. And then there's just like, oh my gosh, I'm stopping the car right now and I'm going to take stock. And I think that really goes to success. It's so easy to judge ourselves and judge where we are and just keep moving fast and ignoring, maybe the signs that you need to slow down. But part of enjoying life and defining success is giving yourself just some room to pause and figure out what really matters to you. And that's really at the soul of the human and, of course, the soul of the brand, too.
Yeah.
Thank you for
Amazing.
that.
This was
Thank you. This
we really
was
appreciate
an absolute gift.
Yeah.
Thank you for being
lovely.
here
You're so
in this
welcome.
capacity. It's just really special to us, and I know it's going to be special to those who hear it. So thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Yay.
Thanks for joining us. If you loved this episode and know of someone who would find value in it, please spread the word and share it with a friend. We are passionate about redefining success, and it would mean the world if you could help us get our mission out to as many people as possible. Please take a minute to write a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify. You can also hit the subscribe button to stay up to date with our latest episodes. Connect with us on Instagram at Success Resequencing Project or via our website at www.successresequencing.com. We'd love to hear your story.